that the Taliban seized power. Let's talk about what's going on there with Dr. Alan Mendoza. He's Executive Director at the Henry Jackson Society. Good morning to you, Alan.
Good morning, Julia.
I think it would be very tempting for a lot of people to say, well, Taliban are in power, Taliban's problem, what the hell has it got to do with us? But the reality is, you know, the vast majority of the people in Afghanistan weren't supporting the Taliban coming back to power, but they're living under the problems imposed by the Taliban. Tell us how bad things have got.
Well, I'd actually question whether the majority weren't in favour of the Taliban. It's a little uncertain as to, I mean, opinion polls don't really exist, but no. It's quite clear the Taliban did have a substantial base of support among the Afghan people for various reasons, which we don't need to get into now. But it doesn't alter the fact that there is a humanitarian crisis unfolding. And it's no surprise, really, because the Taliban are, a bunch of extremists who can't, run the proverbial in a brewery where they're allowed to be in a brewery. And it's of no surprise that, given the Western withdrawal, infrastructure has collapsed around that.
Yeah.
So, yes, of course, there's a humanitarian crisis has emerged. But what is most worrying about all of this is that all of this was easily predicted. At the time of the withdrawal, It was obvious to the West that were we to leave, there would be a humanitarian crisis. And when people talk about, will it affect us here in the UK? Well, it will if that crisis turns into anarchy, turns into lawlessness, turns into extremism and turns into terrorism. Then it most certainly will come back to bite us on the behind, as it has done many times before.
Well, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, these things keep on coming. People, Americans in particular, but many Brits as well, this idea, well, it's not our problem, leave it over there. It has a habit of turning up over here, does it not? Even if it's just refugees and not terrorists. But in terms of the humanitarian crisis, we had the run on the banks and people just queuing up, just desperate to get their money out as the Taliban were taking over. Lots of people unable to work, women basically being shut up in their homes, girls not able to go to school or go to university. But in terms of why the economy is completely collapsing, why would that actually happen? I mean, is this that we're seeing, there's no international money coming in? Is it everyone was withdrawing the money? Was so much of the economy, basically dependent on particularly the American troops that were there? What's gone on?
Well, it's all of these things rolled into one. I mean, you've got a perfect storm, basically. You've got, obviously, a lot of what you need to run a modern economy is about confidence, international confidence that you'll pay your bills, pay your debts, those sorts of aspects. Now, I don't think anyone, has particular confidence the Taliban will do this. So sources of money on the international markets dry up. Equally, aid money dries up, or rather, money put in to support the Afghan government by the West has, dried up because we don't want to support a Taliban government for obvious reasons. It isn't in any way, shape or form an ally of ours. And then you've got, local factors, as you say, the closing down of part of the economy. I think you're right to highlight this issue of women in the workplace and such. Right. Actually, one of the great achievements in Afghanistan over 2 decades was the transformation of the economy to bring women very much into, a modern 21st century economy. And again, that has been, kind of brutally shut down now. So you've got a perfect storm of all these factors working together. And that's, sent the economy into a death spiral as a result.
And again, the crucial here, I mean, there's $5 trillion in aid that has been requested by the United Nations. I mean, this is equivalent to a quarter of the GDP of Afghanistan. It's the largest ever amount ever sought for a single country, and triple the amount that was received in Afghanistan in 2021. So these things do end up, costing, although it's again drop in the ocean compared to the military cost that's been going on over those last 20 years. But again, the key thing here is, whether or not anyone did agree with the Taliban coming back or not, the reality is it is innocent men, women and children, and particularly the children we should be concerned about, who are going to be affected by this. And we are talking about people literally starving to death. I mean, not being hungry, starving to death. I mean, an awful lot of this country is incredibly backward. People are living in almost sort of medieval times in large parts of the country. And we are talking about people whose children are going to die from malnutrition.
Yes, I mean, this is the tragedy of this. It is actually that, ordinary Afghans who've suffered so much over the years already, who've had the ebb and flow between them, who've seen civil war, who've seen wars, and were just at a stage when they were rebuilding lives, now are plunged back into this chaos, into starvation, into facing a humanitarian nightmare. And of course, this is the reason why the money is being requested. It's because people have realised the gravity of the situation. But again, I'm afraid all of this was easily predictable at the time. And, leaders have to look at the decisions they make in the totality of those decisions and go, well, actually, we didn't take this into account, or we paid insufficient attention to this, and people are dying as a result of our decisions.
Absolutely. Well, look, let's talk also about how it does affect us over here. Already this year, we're only a few days in, we've already had more migrants coming over on boats from France. We still don't see any resolution to that, although there's attempts to change the law by the Home Secretary Priti Patel to try and provide sort of less of a demand for paying to get on those boats to people traffickers. But again, these people are coming from many different countries, many are economic migrants. But again, if we do see, as we've seen, absolute collapse of this country and Syria, and also issues in Iraq and Iran and all, Eritrea, Sudan, you cross the board, we are seeing more and more people around the world deciding that actually making that very dangerous, incredibly expensive journey to Europe, and then if they can to the UK, as a viable, sensible option. This is not going to stop anytime soon, is it?
No, unfortunately, the reality is that in the 21st century, people know about how to get to countries they may not have known how to get to 20 years ago. And those routes have already been well trodden by people from all over the world. And as a result, we can expect increased pressure from those, either fleeing from war-torn areas or fleeing from crises, so the true definition of refugees, or just those who seek a better life, the migrant side of the equation as well. People who go, actually, I don't much fancy my life in rural X or Y. I want to come and live in Britain, and I'm going to do it. So that's the real issue, is that the means are there, the knowledge is there, and it is, absurd to consider that this will go back in some kind of pre-21st century process. It won't. It's out there right now, and people will take advantage of it if they can. Okay.
We know this is going to be an ongoing issue throughout the next few years. The migrant boats, we know the polling is really, really clear. This is one of the big concerns for people about the idea that just thousands upon thousands of illegal migrants are able to make it to this country, and when they arrive here, they do get to stay. And we don't know who these people are, what their motives are, and even if they are entirely good in terms of they just want to come for a better life, whether or not we actually want to welcome them. I'm sorry, as much as the bleeding heart liberals want to say this makes people bad people, it really doesn't. It's basically the heart of what a nation state is, the ability to control your borders.